All right, you guys, happy Thursday. This, of course, is the last episode before we go on a 1-week break because we need to research so much. And I'm going to tell you guys, this is going to be an explosive episode. One of our viewers, and truly, I cannot believe I missed this, they found a certain John Trogneux entering the United States in 1961. Plus, on top of that, some of you guys have been messaging me about the show White Lotus and how there's this random incest theme that's suddenly running through it in the recent season. And somehow that term, White Lotus, has come up in my research. I'm telling you guys, this is all getting really crazy, so welcome back to Candace. To be honest, crazy doesn't really cut it. It's cosmically insane, everything that's going on in the world. So I'm going to first explain this expression that we use in America because I know we have so many international viewers. There's an expression in America, a hit dog will holler. Okay, a hit dog will holler. So what that means is sometimes when you're not meaning to offend anybody, you might say something and people get offended, like they get triggered almost. It elicits a response that you're not expecting. And you go, oh, well, the reason why you reacted to that, you're a hit dog hollering. You reacted to that because there's something that you know. It's not because of what I said. It's because of who you are, okay? I'll give you an example of that. So I think it was back in 2022, very strange. I tweeted about genocide. I said something that was perfectly normal. I tweeted, genocide is always wrong, right? The exact tweet is, no government anywhere has a right to commit a genocide ever. There is no justification for a genocide. I can't believe this even needs to be said or is even considered the least bit controversial to state. I was reacting to something that a congressman had said, saying that there was no such thing as an innocent Palestinian life. And then all of a sudden, for a person who used to be a friend of mine, Dave Rubin, jumps in and gets really defensive about whether or not Palestinians are being genocided. This was like way early. This is, as you saw, actually 2023. He tweets, what did he tweet? I think we have it. He had a whole chart ready. Well, as I'm sure you know, Candace, the Palestinian population has gone over 5 times in the last few decades. But thank you for taking a strong stand against Hamas's stated genocide of the Jews, which is in their charter. Wasn't speaking about Jews, was actually hitting a congressman, Brian Mast, that said something really wrong. And suddenly he's going, oh, look at this. The Palestinian, they're so alive. It's 5 times the population. And the Jews are going to be exterminated. I'm like, wow, that's a random hit dog that's hollering. And now we fast forward, that was 2023. Now we fast forward to 2025. And yeah, well, the headline's looking a little different. And it looks like maybe they knew where this was headed, right? This is The Guardian telling us, literally, I think this was published yesterday, revealed Israeli military's own data indicates civilian death rate of 83% in the Gazan war. So yeah, they were on the inside of that and freaking out as soon as anybody used the term, overreacting anytime anybody used the term genocide. Similarly, another example of that is I did an episode back in 2022. And I was discussing the history of psychology. It was literally me just going, oh my gosh, like psychologists have kind of been up to some pretty sadistic, sick stuff. Also, a lot of them happened to be pedophiles. And lo and behold, in the media, there was this response to rush to defend Sigmund Freud, to pretend that I was crazy for even looking at this. And I was just literally going to do one episode on the history of psychology. But the reaction, the hit dog hollering, made me go, okay, there might be something more here, like a trend. So I started to read books and I started to learn more about the history of Sigmund Freud and psychology. And it was much darker than I could have ever imagined. And now we have this book club where we're learning that Sigmund Freud was actually covering up for child abuse. Well, chaos was also one of the reasons I fell down the rabbit hole pretty hard. That's a book that was written by Tom O'Neill, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. The 60s in America, we learn in that book. My takeaway from that book is that the world is a stage, right? It was about the Manson murders. Everything that the public thought they knew about the Manson murders turns out was pretty false. It also, of course, the Manson murders involved Roman Polanski, right? The official story, Roman Polanski, Sharon Tate, she's pregnant. She gets viciously murdered. It's a tragedy for him. Then you read the book and you're like, wow, they were up to weird sex stuff. Nothing is what it seems. He hired a photographer to watch him, or took a photographer with him to watch him grieving in the household. Very strange things. Like I said, my takeaway, the world is a literal stage, and that there are, in fact, military-grade actors who use the press as their supporting cast to convince us, the unwitting audience, that certain events have taken place in the world when they maybe actually did not take place, or maybe did not take place in the way that we thought they did. The book made me realize the power of psychology, the power of propaganda. These two terms are actually relatives. And also Sigmund Freud, who created modern psychology, was a literal relative to Edward Bernays, that was his nephew, who was the father of propaganda. So it's all related. Edward Bernays, by the way, was the father of military-grade propaganda. He got involved, World War II, convincing Americans that it's like totally cool to want to genocide Germans. Totally cool. The Germans are so evil. We can do this with movies. We're going to create this image, and we're going to war. Well, recently, you guys, there was another hit dog, as you've been following this series, that made quite the screeching holler. And I would say it was in the form of Emmanuel Macron's extraordinary lawsuit against me. Never before has anybody filed this lawsuit. He's panicked. We don't know why he's panicked, but he randomly includes in this lawsuit, amongst the allegations and charges against me that have completely thrown him over the edge, the things I have done that have thrown the presidential couple over the edge. He mentions the fact that I bring up MK Ultra throughout the series. Actually, it wasn't throughout the series. In fact, he mentions this MK Ultra program 18 times in this lawsuit. Okay? The lawsuit filed against me, MK Ultra, is discussed 18 times. I'm sorry, but is that not weird? Like, what about MK Ultra got him so triggered that they're furiously writing about this? And I'm going to show you here in the lawsuit at the bottom of page 59, paragraphs 132 to 133. We're not going to go over all 18 examples. You can read this lawsuit, and you could type in MK Ultra yourself and see that everything that we're telling you is true. But they wrote to encourage, actually at the top, 132, toward the end of episode 2, Owens turned her gaze towards President Macron to begin seeding her eventual claim that he is the product of MK Ultra or a similar government control program. You can see that's not in quotations. I never said that. MK Ultra was a secret CIA program that conducted human experiments to develop mind control techniques using drugs, psychological manipulation, and torture. That's true. They then write, to encourage suspicion, Owens characterized President Macron's childhood as a black hole with very little information available. She suggested that his upbringing may be linked to a clandestine government plot because his father was a psychiatrist and his mother was a pediatrician. Owens referenced the book Chaos about the CIA's MK Ultra program and told viewers that its contents were relevant as we go along with this series, learning about some government programs which involved a lot of psychiatrists. It all just kind of fits in. Yeah, why are you so triggered about me? And what I actually did was I spoke about the fact that throughout Emmanuel Macron's childhood, he was isolated, okay? The classmates spoke out and said he was a loner. He was always by himself. He spoke out and said that he was very, very much was a bookworm, got lost in books with his grandmother. And then I spoke about how one of the aims of the MK Ultra program was to isolate individuals to see how they would react after being isolated. I mean, it was a sadistic time. The 60s just was a sadistic time. I made it clear that we have no idea whether or not the program went global. We know that the majority of the files were erased, effectively destroyed by the government because they didn't want people knowing what they were looking into. It was all about mind control. Why is Macron upset? Why are Brigitte and Emmanuel upset that I mentioned that on episode 2 of this series? The series is about your wife having been born a male. You're hyper-focusing on MK Ultra program to the tune of 18 times it's being honorably mentioned in this lawsuit of everything that I'm alleging. Why is it that triggered the couple, seriously? Well, you will recall a couple of days ago, someone saw a photo that they thought looked like it could be Jean-Michel Trogneux, right? Showing you the side by side here. They said, I'm watching a documentary, looking at this side profile, and look, it looks like it could be him. Now, I'm looking at this, and I'll tell you what I see in my eyes. You can pull that back up, Skylar. On the right, you see it looks like someone like a student, right? And that they're writing. And yeah, the hairline can look similar. But honestly, we didn't know. We didn't know. But given the extraordinary and unprecedented lawsuit that is being filed by this couple against me, we are going to chase down any and every available lead, right? We want to now get to the actual truth. We're now not done with this series. This series has to become my life because he's threatening my entire life, right? They want to sue me out of existence. For what? For reporting on a book? That doesn't make any sense. Like I said, we weren't positive. We're just chasing leads. And again, Brigitte, as we know, rather mysteriously stated in 2018 interview that she spent a lot of time throughout her childhood in the United States, that she had fond memories of the United States, that she celebrated the moon landing with Americans. So that means, to be clear, her name is Brigitte Marie Trogneux. We should be able to find Brigitte Marie Trogneux having entered in the United States in the 60s multiple times. But we couldn't find Brigitte Marie. We also couldn't find Jean-Michel Trogneux anywhere in the United States manifest, the ship manifest that we're accustomed to looking through. And I want you guys to know this. The Trogneux last name is incredibly uncommon. It's almost like when you start looking at this story, it only exists exclusively in and around the region of Amiens. It's not even popular throughout France. It's just that northern region. That's when you start seeing all of these Trogneux. And similarly, in the United States, we actually decided to perform a search. There's one individual in the United States, living in the United States, that has the last name Trogneux. Okay, some random individual that we're assuming is unrelated to this story. So we're going, okay, well, what are the chances we're going to be able to actually find Brigitte, Jean-Michel? I looked everywhere, tried Jean-Michel, John Trogneux, nothing came up. And then yesterday we got an explosive email. And we are at the beginning of this, guys, so bear with me as I take you through this. Of course, there is a potential that we are making some errors. This is an open investigation. If we make errors, we will correct them in the future. Now, I'm going to protect the person's identity and not read the name so they don't get unnecessarily sued by the president of France. They said, Candace, I'm assuming you saw that a Jean-Marie Trogneux entered into the United States in the 1960s. And I'm going, no, I most certainly did not see that a Jean-Marie Trogneux entered into the United States in the 1960s. That's kind of like a very good time frame that we are looking for Jean-Michel Trogneux, and this is not a popular last name. And they tell me, yeah, it's on the Department of Justice website. It's in a document in the National Archives. You can see that a certain Jean-Marie Trogneux entered into the United States, and he's listed as a crew member that is aboard a French cargo ship on August 27th, 1961. Okay, so Jean-Michel would have been 16 years old, and we have no trace of Jean-Michel during those years, right? We don't know where Jean-Michel went. We don't really know where this First Lady went either when she was spending time in America. This Jean-Marie, and we can show you this document. We can pull this up. You can see it at the bottom there. Jean-Marie, it tells us the last 4 digits of the passport is 3408, that he was an oiler. And yeah, elsewhere we find that we believe that they came from Le Havre, France, which is a port and also a city in France, and that they made a stop in British Columbia. So Canadians, if you're paying attention, that stop, by the way, was on August 25th, 2 days earlier, 1961. They were in British Columbia. And then they finished this trip here, August 27th. And they then disembark in Seattle. Okay. Very interesting. Okay, this is a crew, and we're now on the West Coast. I'm going to assume again that this individual has got to be related because we know Marie is their family name. That is the dad's name, Jean-Michel Marie Trogneux. It is still Brigitte's middle name, Brigitte Marie Trogneux. Okay, so it's interesting. Again, it is during Jean-Michel Trogneux's missing years. Also, what we learn from this document when you go through it is that the captain of the ship, his name is Guy Choplin. okay? Choplin. And I crawled through everything that I could find on this individual. We were only able to come up with one picture that was available of this captain in this rather obscure Marine digest. And Skylar, you have to remind me, yeah, it's Michigan. Okay, you can see it right there. It's speaking about the MS Michigan, this Marine digest. You can see there on the left-hand side, that is the captain, Guy Choplin, being presented with a photo. I'm going to read you that caption. It's in small print, so bear with me. Captain Guy Choplin, master of French Line's new MS Michigan, receives a framed photo of Seattle's harbor from a delegation of the Seattle Junior Chamber of Commerce. The French-built vessel is on her maiden voyage to the Pacific coast. Participating in the brief ceremonies were, and then tells us that is Charles McLeod, that it is Rolanda Luna, who's holding the photo on the left-hand side, and then it's Captain Choplin, who is not looking up, so we can't get really a great idea of what he looks like, even though he is looking forward, and also a certain Donald R. Tate. General Steamship Corp. Limited is the General Pacific Coast Freight agents for the line. The photo was a gift from the Seattle Port Commission. Now, one thing that I have a question regarding is that General Steamship Corp. That is not who owns the ship. That could make sense, by the way. I know, just to be super honest with you guys, nothing about shipping. So I am looking forward to the tips that are going to flood in. You guys can probably even look at that photo and the outfit he is wearing and tell me stuff, right? If you know about shipping, you know about shipping. If you know about cargo ships, if you know about crews, how often crews change out. The point is this person is listed as a crew member of this ship. We could not find that Guy Choplin outside of this photo. Now, regarding the ship, however, because then we just said, okay, what can we find out about this ship? There wasn't much, but a very interesting thing was discovered. Now, you will recall that Jean-Michel Trogneux, when we were thinking about this Stanford thing, we're like, well, we know that he has a military file. We know that he was in Speyer, Germany, and he was a non-commissioned officer. And then the trail just sort of runs cold. He's in Germany. Last thing that we know, and then it runs cold. He's playing hockey. We told you about that. I know there's some people in Germany that are looking through, trying to find photos and helping us out there. We really appreciate that. But still, given that information, it would have been a stretch for us to assume that he was aboard a ship that somehow made its way close to Stanford University, just in time for a psychological experiment that happened in 1971. That's a bit of a stretch. There is quite literally no evidence of that, right? But it is certainly not a stretch that whoever this Jean-Marie Trogneux character is, okay, we can potentially put him exactly near Stanford University beginning at the year of 1971. Do you want to know why we can do that? Because, well, as you just saw, he's listed as the crew of the MS Michigan. And in 1971, the MS Michigan was doing routes specifically from Germany to Oakland, California. Okay, how do we know that? We learned this via the most obscure and random lawsuit that was filed. I like the karma of that there just being a lawsuit that lets us be able to put this Jean-Marie Trogneux character potentially as a person working on this boat. There was a random lawsuit that was filed against the shipping company for having ruined cargo. Okay, the lawsuit was filed by the Varian Association, the Varian Associates against the General Transatlantic Company. Now, the General Transatlantic Company, the French, it's actually a French company that owns this ship, and so you can see that right there at the top. It says the company General Transatlantique, which I think was the person who runs that was given a Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1955 in France. So that would be interesting to see that, if there's some photos of that, who that was. Anyways, I'm not going to bore you with the details of this lawsuit, but the French liner was appealing a lower court decision, which found them guilty of having damaged cargo. It was an 8,000-pound electromagnet, and they found them guilty and owing $35,000. Not a small amount of money in the 70s. But the lawsuit lists the facts of what happened. The lawsuit states, quote, on January 18th, 1971, Varian contracted with the French line ship to ship a spectrometer system packed in 6 separate boxes from Oakland, California to Hamburg, West Germany. Okay? To be clear, Oakland is about a 35-minute drive from Stanford University. Some of you guys are not from California. It's right there. That is right there. I've gone to Oakland, drove down, spoke at Stanford University. You can kind of do them all the universities right there, UCLA included, Berkeley and Stanford University. So I was like, okay, that's really interesting now. We know that this liner was going back and forth, and I would like to know if Jean-Marie Trogneux was the crew member while it was doing those rounds in 1971. Find me Jean-Marie Trogneux. This should be very simple. Like I said, there's not a lot of people to choose from, okay? Now, I want to say something about the Stanford experiment because many of you guys emailed us regarding that photo. Like I said, it looks like he's taking notes. And you guys were going, first and foremost, I should let you know, all of our worlds are converging, going back to that book, Chaos, which for whatever reason we're not allowed to discuss without upsetting the president of France. Well, I remember that Stanford University was brought up a few times, particularly as it relates to MK Ultra. The MK Ultra experiment, like the president says, was this covert psychological operation that was run by Dr. Jolly West. Like, this is the villain of all villains, Dr. Jolly West. And when you read that book, you're just like, wow, I can't even with the 60s. I trust nothing that comes out of the 60s. Well, interestingly enough, Jolly West, per Tom O'Neill's reporting, went to Stanford University. He did a fellowship at Stanford University in 1966. Okay, so we know for a fact, on basis of that book, that there were Stanford students, graduate students, that were working with Jolly West. Everything that happened in that book, I'm not going to recap everything, but it tells you in this page from Chaos that late in the fall of 1966, Jolly West arrived in San Francisco to study hippies and LSD. The Bay Area had seen an unprecedented migration of middle-class youth with an explosion of recreational drug use. West felt he had to witness it firsthand. He secured a government grant and took a year-long sabbatical from his professorship at the University of Oklahoma, nominally to pursue a fellowship at Stanford, although that school had no record of his participation in a program there. So it's like he went there and did a fellowship, but there's no record of that, which if you've read Chaos, you know all the records were destroyed. And if it wasn't for the fact that that journalist, Tom O'Neill, started going through obscure university files, Jolly West, until the day he died, denied having anything to do with MK Ultra. And unfortunately for him, then along came Tom O'Neill, and he explodes the entire affair. So he was very good at erasing his tracks until he found them in a box that Jolly West had donated. I can't remember if it was to UCLA or to what university it was. After his death, posthumously, there were tons of boxes, and Tom O'Neill took the time to go through them. Anyways, lastly, I want to point out something else that's interesting. Much of what the public was told about the Stanford experiment was a lie, okay? There were accusations of bad faith acting, intentional acting, because they wanted to say that they got a specific response from having done this experiment. And you will recall I brought up this guy, David Eshelman, who was also known as the John Wayne of the experiment. And he pretends like, oh, I had no idea I was going to be a guard. But then on day 2, I just became more brutal and I liked it. And it was sadistic. And this was like, I just got into it. He's very over the top and comes across like an actor. I'll let you watch that clip again real quickly.
Each day I said, well, what can we do to ramp up what we did yesterday? How can we build on that?
Why did you want to ramp things up?
2 reasons, I think. One was because I really believed I was helping the researchers with some better understanding of human behavior. On the other hand, it was personally interesting to me. I cannot say that I, did not enjoy what I was doing. Maybe, having so much power over these poor defenseless prisoners, maybe, you kind of get off on that a little bit.
So to be clear, he was an actor. He was pursuing a degree in acting, and he is, in fact, a trained actor. And while the public was told that these participants also didn't know each other, we just put in an ad of the newspaper and we got a response, and then we went through some assessment and picked the ones that we thought would be best suited. they actually did know each other. And while David Eshelman runs around and gets all the attention and talks about how he loved it and like got into this role very quickly, he knew another participant who, for whatever reason, was kind of neglected. Movies were made about this experiment, and no one wanted to speak to John Marks, who was one of the individuals that was a part of this experiment. And he was saying that this experiment that we were involved in, what the public knows, they were lied to. It's fraudulent. Now, how do I know that he says that? Well, because I found a Reddit thread. He did an AMA on Reddit, okay? An AMA is Ask Me Anything. Now, the first thing you're going to think is, Candace, this is Reddit. We don't know if that's him. Wrong. We know it's him because to prove that it's him, he provides a link of him. He provides his California driver's license, which says that he's in Sausalito, California. He also held up a sign, said prison guard 3615, and goes, you guys can see this is actually me. And then just to be triply sure rather, I actually did a side-by-side comparison of his face. I found his high school photo because I'm a psycho in a yearbook, and I was able to determine, because he makes it clear that it's the same individual. So this was legit. It was John Mark. And what he says in this Reddit AMA from 11 years ago, the first thing that he wants people to know is that the bad guard from the night shift, that being David Eshelman, was a high school friend of mine, he writes. Unfortunately, the experiment and the way his play acting was interpreted as real tainted the results and caused me to not feel as friendly toward him anymore after that. So they knew each other, they were friends. Occasionally, he goes on, we meet at reunions, and at one occasion, he apologized for his behavior. Then he goes on and he writes, and this gets really interesting, the prisoner who was removed from the experiment for a breakdown was the younger brother of one of my friends. Okay, so now we realize that 3 of them potentially knew each other. And even more, because he writes, but I never had any subsequent contact with him. When he was removed, he was replaced by a new prisoner who was, in fact, a grad student who was working with Philip Zimbardo, that's the guy who ran the entire experiment, who was placed as a mole to find out what the student prisoners were up to. This new prisoner / grad student was also an acquaintance of mine. So while I didn't out him, and I'm sure none of us were supposed to know that he was a part of the research team, nor was his background ever published to my knowledge, I knew who he was. Okay, because that becomes very interesting. So he's saying that, which we learn in terms of what was publicized, some people quit the experiment. Those people have said that they were acting. One of the individuals said they were acting. And he's now saying that there was this prisoner swap, which wasn't reported, where a graduate student then went in and became a prisoner, but he was really a mole that was working under Philip Zimbardo. Now, that part is interesting because many of you emailed us about prisoner number 2093, thinking that that prisoner in the Stanford Prison Experiment looked a lot like Jean-Michel Trogneux. But again, we didn't think that was possible because in that side profile shot, the JMT lookalike is clearly not a prisoner. Like he's like writing notes, he's not in the right prison garb. And then suddenly there is a lot of gray images where it looks like it could be JMT. But then in other images throughout, that prisoner looks like a totally different person. Like he's got long blonde hair here. And I'm going, why do I feel like this is 2 different people? Like sometimes he's got weight on him and sometimes he doesn't. So I just kind of put it out of my mind. The appearance, just like the change in the appearance seems strange. But now this guy is saying like, no, they changed around who the prisoners were, that they sent in a mole. And who knows what happened because Zimbardo has essentially locked down the files. A lot of you guys were like, oh, the names of them. We found the names here of the people that were involved in the experiment. No, he says in his book that he used different names to protect their identities. And he has never actually released the full list of the individuals, the 24 students who we were told didn't know each other that were involved in this experiment. And so I don't know. I don't know what to think here, but I am now very interested. There's a lot of things that's happening now. To be clear, it could be nothing. It could be nothing. As we saw during the Kamala Chronicles, as we began looking into things, sometimes, you want something to fit and it could fit and then you're wrong. And so if it's wrong and we get more information, we'll be the first ones to let you know, right? We wish we could just ask these questions and shut things down by going to Brigitte and Emmanuel. They don't want to answer any questions. I want to ask Brigitte, hey, by the way, you can be the first one to shut this down. Be like, hey, here's the dates that I was in the United States. Here it is. Here's me pictured with my family. I assume you took some pictures while you were in your youth in the United States. Is that a fair assumption that like when you go on a trip, you might take some photos if you spent that much time in your youth? Brigitte could shut this down. We have never been in the business of trying to present a story that's not truthful. It doesn't help me. It doesn't help people that are at home. But I am getting increasingly interested because you have to wonder what the hell warrants a response like this from a sitting president in a foreign country. What the hell warrants a response from a sitting president of this country? Why did Trump call me so quickly? Like something I didn't think about until I was reflecting upon it, how quick that phone call came in right after Emmanuel Macron left. Is there something that we accidentally, like I always do, stumbled upon just because I was interested? Did I accidentally stumble upon something that could potentially implicate the United States in some way? What was Brigitte doing? Like actually, what was Brigitte doing in the United States throughout her youth? The good thing is that first and foremost, you guys can email us and we will investigate everything. We will actually include links to all of this. Skylar, if you want to make a note, the Reddit AMA, we will include a link to that. Also, we will include a link so that you can see that on the Department of Justice website. If you are in Canada, please start looking through shipping records and see if you can find a Jean-Marie. Anybody with the last name Trogneux, that would also be helpful. Everywhere you are in the world. Also, in that lawsuit, it said that the ship deviated. That was one of the reasons they were suing and went off course. They say that the ship stopped in Antwerp. So yeah, tons of people that all over that can get involved and just see what you can find on ship manifest. If you can find that last name, and maybe you're going, actually, Candace, I know the crew member, Jean-Marie Trogneux, and I can shut this down immediately for you. Here is me and my buddy. We worked on that ship together, and we've got photos because people take photos growing up, working together. That would be normal. Please send it to us. We want to know. We are dying to know. This is truly the most exciting lead, I think, is this Jean-Marie Trogneux. I do think that that individual has to at least be in the family of Brigitte Macron. Is it the dad? The dad would have been alive during that time, maybe. But they tell us nothing. So we have to investigate this stuff ourselves. Also, something else I want to add here that I found to be interesting. We found Jonathan Mark, the Reddit poster, that he graduated from Stanford 4 years later. He is on the Stanford alumni directory from that exact same place. I forgot what it was called, like Salsa something, California. It's listed that he graduates then 4 years later. So that's another question mark. Again, we were told it's supposed to be all these people around. I don't know what's happening, but as we take this week off, we're going to start going through and seeing what it is that we can learn about every individual that was involved in this experiment, because I've already discovered that a few of them spoke French. I don't know what the chances are that you round up random people in America, graduate students, and they're French. They can also speak French. That's of interest to me. But we could be trying to make it fit, you know? We could be trying to make it fit, and maybe it doesn't. So you guys will have to let us know. Don't go away, because now I have to tell you something about White Lotus. And I don't think I never thought that I would say this on the show. But people of China, I need your help. People of China who actually can't watch YouTube, but I know you guys are watching this series somehow because of the comments. I need your help in understanding something that happened historically in China. We'll get to that in a second. First, I want to tell you guys about Preborn, because every heartbeat tells a story. And at Preborn, they give moms in crisis a chance to hear that heartbeat for free. And that's exactly why I partner with Preborn. Preborn isn't out to judge women. They're making motherhood possible. They provide free ultrasounds. They share the gospel of Jesus Christ. And most importantly, they stay after the baby is born with real practical support by giving expecting mothers diapers, baby clothes, and even housing and financial help for up to 2 years after the baby is born, because that's what true Christ-centered compassion looks like. And here's how you can be a part of that. For just $28, you can give a mom a free ultrasound, one chance to see her baby. And when she does, she is twice as likely to choose life. Preborn is on a mission to save 70,000 babies this year. So don't just say that you're pro-life. You can actually live that now. To donate, just call 1-855-601-2229, or you can head to preborn.com/Candace. Again, that's preborn.com/Candace. Also, I want to tell you guys about Dose, because morning in my house is no joke. I've got 4 kids, a million things to do, prepping a show. Somehow I still try to show up as my best self. That's why I like to start my day with Dose. Dose is a powerful all-in-one wellness shop that helps support gut health, immunity, and energy, and all the stuff that really matters when you don't have time to slow down. And let's be honest, when you've got a big and busy family, slowing down is not an option. It takes me literally 5 seconds in the morning, and I feel the difference all day long. Their bestseller is Dose for Your Liver, which was formulated to cleanse your liver of unwanted elements, also to aid digestion and to maintain your body's filter. Dose's clinical results showed lowering liver enzyme levels by 50% in most of their participants. One shot of Dose for Your Liver is equivalent to 17 shots of turmeric juice. Dose is gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, and it's vegan. So stick with Dose, and you'll feel the incredible benefits over time, which are more energy. You'll feel that you have better digestion. It will reduce bloating. You'll have healthier liver enzyme function, reduction in brain fog as well, and better sleep. Right now, you will save 30% off on your first month subscription by going to dosedaily.co/Candace or by entering code Candace at checkout. That's dosedaily.co/Candace or by using code Candace for 30% off your first month subscription. Okay, now to the second part, China. China, I need your help, okay? Asia, I need your help. Actually, because India is kind of involved in this too. Very preliminary research that I'm talking about. While we were on break, there is a lot of things that we have to look into, but one of the themes that we have talked about on the show, which is interesting, is how culture seems to be pushing upon us this idea that incest can be sexy. Most recently, I was referring to the Kardashian sisters. I actually have been screaming about this for years, even back when I was on the Daily Wire, going, hey guys, you know how they're selling perfume, but like Kylie and her sisters are all half naked next to each other, making sexy faces? Yet that is them trying to kind of seed the idea to us that incest can be okay, and it's not okay. Similarly, Heidi Klum, her daughter just turned 18. They did this ad where they were like half naked. I don't remember what, I think they might have been selling lingerie. That, if my sister even came within 20 feet of me in a bikini, I would tackle her, okay? You're supposed to be like, bleh, you know? But they're trying to be like, and we're enticing and sexy, like buy the product. That's weird. That is very strange. Well, let me tell you something. A few of you actually emailed us and said, Candace, further to that point, I don't know if you watch White Lotus. I watched the first 2 seasons. It's an HBO series, but there was randomly there was certainly outrage about it. There was randomly, they just sort of threw in this incest theme. I think the story goes that, and Skylar, tell me in my ear that 2 brothers, or you can you speak, Skylar? I don't know if you can speak in there. Okay, apparently it was two guys. Okay, so apparently there was a kissing scene with 2 brothers that took place on this smash hit series. And everyone's just like, why? Why is this necessary? Why do we need gay incest in this moment for the show to be good? And the storyline is about elites, and they're kind of getting away with a lot of stuff. And the hotel is named the White Lotus Hotel. Nobody really knew why this was named the White Lotus Hotel, or at least I didn't know. I knew nothing about that term White Lotus at all. I thought it was just like maybe a pretty flower. I don't know, maybe some sort of a bug. I had no idea. Well, you're not going to believe it. So we received another email, and somebody gave me a tip and said, hey, Candace, I'm trying to access this file, but I am getting the last name Trogneux, and I can't, but when I click it, I can't open it. And what I realized when I took a look at that was the individual was trying to access a book, and it required that that person paid $33 to be able to access why Trogneux was being mentioned in the context of China in the 18th century. Now, the 18th century is a pretty big century, right? Because the French Revolution happens in 1789. And by and large, the French Revolution was a sexual revolution, okay? And in this book, I'm actually going to read it to you guys. Give me a second because I downloaded it. It's very expensive, and I'm going to tell you what it tells us. It tells us that, and I'm recapping here, but essentially there was in China a rebellion that took place, and a bunch of Jesuits leading up to this rebellion, not a bunch of Jesuits, a handful of Jesuits, under the guise of saying that we're here on a Catholic mission, came in to China, one of their names being Father Trogneux. I kid you not. The full name is Father Francois Theodore Trogneux. Came in to China. And then it tells us very quickly in this book that the Catholics were accused of being White Lotus members. And I'm like, okay, that is interesting. What is White Lotus? And then I learned that there's this big rebellion that took place in China. It was called the White Lotus Rebellion. And in my preliminary research, it tells me that aspects of this, there were accusations that were thrown of sexual impropriety that was taking place. I don't know if it had something to do with tantric sex rituals. It's weird. It is weird, okay, that somehow this was taking place. And then we learned that a Father Trogneux, and then when I researched, of course, he's from the Picardy region of France, that a Father Trogneux was there. So I'm going to read you directly from that book. The book is called This Suffering Is My Joy. And they don't even put the full name of Father Trogneux. I actually had to look up Father Trogneux after this book. But it tells us that the suspicions of Catholics being linked to the White Lotus sect led to a persecution in 1747 in which Martiliat, I'm going to spell that for you guys, Martiliat, and other Europeans were forced to leave Sichuan for Macau. Okay, so they were French missionaries, and they said that they somehow got blamed, said that they were being accused of being a part of the White Lotus sect, but it tells us on the next page that under Moulinet, who was a Jesuit missionary that went into China, he then brought in 3 other Lazarists, and their names were Fathers Gandin, Father Monet, and Father Trogneux. That they were sent from France, and they arrived in China at the end of 1733. And then they get accused. So 1733, they are in France. They enter into France, this Father Trogneux. And then by 1747, they're being linked to the White Lotus sect. So I will ask you, tell me more about the White Lotus sect. If you live in China, tell me the stuff that I can't find, because there does seem to be a wall between what happens in the East and what happens here. What aspects of it were considered sexual perversion? They believe that, I guess, some rituals were taking place. Please tell me more about that. I am fascinated by that period in general, like I said, not only because the French Revolution happens, but because another hit dog that hollered in all of this was when I talked about Jacob Frank. When I talked about this Frankist movement that took place at this same time. They were individuals it was a cult of military. They believed in constantly changing their names. And Jacob Frank's cousin was the person behind the French Revolution. They mass converted into the Catholic Church because they practice apostasy. So the best way to bring down your enemies is from within. So to pretend that you're pious, that you're Catholic, and then to crush the church from the inside. These are all available facts. You can go look this up. Jacob Frank's cousin went by 3 different names, by the way, Austria. If you want to look into the von Schonfeld family, he went by Moses de Bruschka, which was his real name what was his name during the French Revolution? Can you look that up? Look up Moses de Bruschka. Not that that's the easiest thing to spell, but I'm going to need to know I need to figure this out because I want to know what his 3 names were so people can kind of look into this individual. But yeah, and then he went in there into Strasbourg. He starts publicizing because they know that it's always been a press thing. We have to control the press and fomenting unrest. And so now we're learning that in this exact same period, people are accused of doing stuff in China. I need to know what was going on, what, if anything, was going on. Here we are, Moses de Bruschka. And he tells us that he was a writer. They're all writers, poet, and also a revolutionary. He was the first cousin of Jacob Frank, like I said, who claimed to be the Jewish Messiah. I also heard that during that White Lotus rebellion, that person who eventually led that rebellion proclaimed that he was a Messiah. If I'm correct, very little stuff that I can find on it. Again, this is the beginning of research, but it tells us that he converted from Judaism to the Catholic faith, and he took on the name Franz Thomas Schonfeld, right? So he went by Franz Thomas Schonfeld. He also, in Vienna, went by Franz Thomas Elder von Schonfeld, and then he went by Moses de Bruschka. And yeah, this guy, Ephraim Joseph Hirschfeld. Hirschfeld was the last name. They were Freemasons at the end of the day. They were the main activists of the Masonic Lodge, and they were active in Germany. They were active in Austria. between 1783 and 1790. And then obviously we know the French Revolution happens at that time. So lot to process there. I need to know more about what were the sexual perversions that they were accused of in this White Lotus sect, if anything. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know anything right now. That's the point. That's why we go to you guys, because we get to just activate a bunch of investigators. Poor Elysee Palace staying up late right now watching this. I think they really did believe that I was working with like Russian people, the Russian government, as well as the far right politicians in various countries. And truly, when we go through this court process, they're going to realize it's just moms and dads that are concerned about what's happening in the world right now, all over the world, that are sending information, that are doing due diligence, that know something because they were sailors or they were captains or they have access because they know how to research an archive center faster than I do. They don't know how to respond to truth. They don't recognize it. They don't recognize genuine interest because they've been so ingenuine their entire lives, right? When your entire life becomes a carefully woven lie, you do feel attacked when you see something that is truth, that is rising organically. You don't even understand something that can be grown organically because your entire life is inorganic. That's exactly what is happening right now at the Elysee Palace. And so everybody, tons of themes that we've covered today, but it's going to take all of us. So please, please, please email tips@CandaceOwens.com with whatever you can find. Again, making it clear to you guys, some of you guys are sending me names of people that are in the experiment. He was very clear that he used pseudonyms. So you're going to say prisoner 2093, Tom Williams. That person has not actually ever been identified. And as we now know, there were prisoners that were switching. So we are looking to find the real names. If you were in this experiment, maybe John Mark, you'd like to speak. I don't know if you're still alive. I'll look into that. All a part of our research. We're exploring, as I said at the top of the show, every available lead, because now we need to finally get to the truth of what happened to Jean-Michel Trogneux. All right, guys, before I get to some of your questions and comments, you may have a few. I'm going to speak to you guys about PureTalk, because how many times have you heard that expression, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? That's great, and that device does work for most things, but not so much for a cell phone. Over time, a phone's battery life fades, the processor can't keep up, and it's been dropped usually by then one too many times. Fortunately, thanks to PureTalk, your cell phone is something that you can replace. When you switch to PureTalk this month, they will give you a Samsung Galaxy A36 for free with a $35 qualifying plan for just $35 a month for talk, text, data, and a free Samsung phone with scratch-resistant Gorilla Glass and a battery that lasts all day. All on America's most dependable 5G network. Supporting companies like PureTalk is a win-win. You win by cutting your cell phone bill in half. They win by hiring more Americans and helping more veterans. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Go to puretalk.com/Owens to get your free phone today. Again, that's puretalk.com/Owens to switch to my wireless company and America's wireless company, which is PureTalk. Also remind you guys about American financing, because if you've been living on credit cards just to cover groceries, gas, and bills, you know those interest rates are brutal. Why keep paying 20% or more to the banks when you could call my friends at American Financing? They have mortgage rates in the 5s, and they are showing people every day how to keep more of your hard-earned money in your pocket and out of the hands of credit card companies. Right now, American Financing is helping homeowners save an average of $800 a month by using their home equity to wipe out high interest debt with no upfront fees, no obligation, and just a 10-minute call to a salary-based mortgage consultant. And here's the kicker. If you start today, you could delay 2 mortgage payments, putting even more cash in your hands right away. So don't wait. Call American Financing at 800-795-1210. Again, that's 800-795-1210, or you can visit americanfinancing.net/Owens. That's americanfinancing.net/Owens. All right, you guys, let's see what you are thinking. If you guys are probably like me last night when I was like, oh, what is happening? So much happening. Okay. First and foremost, we have Ozzy Co. Thank you, by the way, for that donation. Candace, thank you for your commitment to speaking the truth. Your voice reaches far beyond the U.S., and we are all ears from Sydney, Australia. May your voice continue to shine light in dark places, and may you always be protected in truth and love. Thank you. Hopefully, I'll be seeing you soon as we await this decision from the Supreme Court. Governments are going after me, and I've been so confused about why, because I really am a nice person, and I'm not involved in any conspiracies. No one is funding me to do anything but people that are out there that are supporting us. And I don't know. I have faith in the people. I really do. I'm like, we can do this. I don't have the money, but we will be able to, with you guys supporting me like this and people buying and supporting my upcoming book and everything else, we'll be able to find it somewhere, because we can't keep letting them do this. We will crush you and ruin your life, and we'll impoverish you for speaking the truth because we don't want to. Somebody has to take a stand. Somebody absolutely has to take a stand. Abdullah writes, and thank you, Abdullah, that's also a really kind donation. Extradite Tom Alexandrovic to the USA. Yep, that is the Israeli that was arrested in Vegas. And yeah, Pam Bondi just couldn't get out there fast enough to condemn it like she did when that Zionist student got lightly shoved on a college campus. That was the worst thing she's ever seen. But this, hands are tied. What can we say? The Menagerie by Drea Lee. Thank you, from, I think, California. You are writing that SPE, the Stanford Prison Experiment, the person who ran it, Philip Zimbardo's follow-up slide show stated, quote, less good news is that Sarge, that's prisoner 2093, was later arrested for high technology equipment theft. I couldn't find any arrest record in case someone else can. Okay, that's a good thing that you're introducing. Prisoner 2093 was later arrested, according to Philip Zimbardo, for high technology equipment theft. Could it be like a electromagnetic 8,000 pound electromagnetic lawsuit? I don't even know what you do with 8,000 pounds of magnet. I'm kidding there. I know that will then just appear in a later lawsuit. Oh, you accused her of being this person. No, I am just saying that is interesting. That I literally don't know what you do with 8,000 pounds of magnet. Maybe somebody can tell me. Argonaut writes, Trump's constant praise for Israel looks genuine. Doesn't look like blackmail. Israel equals God, Bible, and he thinks God is saving him in Butler and was a divine sign to do as Israel demands. This is his atonement. Could not disagree with you more. Obviously, it's not genuine when you are gaslighting us about Jeffrey Epstein. If it was genuine, he thought that it was a mission, he would have no issue telling us about Jeffrey Epstein, because there's no way he thinks that his mission, his God-given mission, is to protect a convicted pedophile. So I do forcefully reject the idea that this is just being motivated because he feels that it's his atonement in life. He is fearful of something in the files. We can guess as to what that is. We don't really have a clear idea of that, but it ain't God saving him, I don't think. Heartless writes, hey Candace, Hollywood is making incest more palatable or romanticizing it also on the House of Dragon, Game of Thrones, and A Simple Favor, amongst other. Why do fictional books and movies need an incest theme? They don't. But as we know, culture is how you, as they've studied, is how you infect minds. Don't forget Netflix. Sigmund Freud relative started Netflix, right? This is what they do. They know the power of television. They are literally telling us a vision, telling us it's okay. That's why that book, Hollywood Babylon, is even significant. It's why they turn people into stars, and they get the stars to do things that seem outrageous, because they know that it will create a following, as people will look at them and worship the stars. Like we learned in Hollywood Babylon, the book, they quite literally were trying to turn it into a religion. So you are being indoctrinated into a religion via culture. The question is, what religion is it? What religion is it that wants men to be women and women to be men, and wants to make us glorify incest as a theme? What religion is that exactly? The closest thing I can find to it would be Jacob Frank, the Frankists that were behind the French Revolution. That would be the closest thing that I could find that mimics that. Apostasy, lying, propaganda, writing, publishing, changing your names like gypsies, infiltrating, and practicing incest as a rite. That was Kabbalistic. That's just the fact. And they don't like you talking about it. So maybe we should stop talking about it, or take a week break so we can research and come back with absolute fire when we return with Becoming Brigitte Season 2, you guys. Ready your engines. I'm back in touch with Xavier Poussard. This is going to get very interesting. Certainly not what I think Emmanuel Macron thought was going to happen. Emmanuel Macron, I still do perceive you as a victim. I really do. And I can't imagine what it is. I don't think you know anything but acting. I think when you get to that stage, having acted, as we know, all through your life, beginning when Brigitte pursued you, if somebody came in and said, cut, I think you might feel like you don't even know who you are. Like, what do you mean? This is what I've always done. And so I am sympathetic to the 14-year-old boy that was at that school, that was acting. And I can only imagine, like, I don't know. I don't even know how you would ever be able to put the genie back into the bottle. So you are fighting me because you need to accept that this reality is real, that everything that happened to you is okay. Reading the Sigmund Freud book that I'm currently reading, The Assault on Truth, that we're reading my book club, really lets me know that victims can become the most ardent defenders of their oppressors. That is the reality. I mean, the way that you defended and the Élysée Palace tried to lie when we watched Brigitte Macron physically lay hands on you is stunning. Your instinct was to protect the person that had hit you and to lie to the public, to gaslight the public. You're angry at the public for knowing. It's fascinating. All of it is very fascinating, and we're going to get to something. What that something is, I don't know. You guys, while we are off, if you have been enjoying this and you want to invest in our series, please head to CandaceOwens.com, sign up, buy a t-shirt, buy a hashtag Free Emmanuel t-shirt to support this lawsuit, because they got money, and we don't. Those are just the facts. It's never ending for them, and they know that. And I am going to remain hopeful. Also, if you can't, because sometimes people are going through not the best financial time, pray for us. The prayers work. I believe that they have been keeping us protected and keeping us safe. And like I have been praying for information to just land on our lap so that we can get to the truth of this before we even ever arrive into the courtroom. And I think that we're one step closer. Who is Jean-Marie Trogneux? Hopefully we'll have more information for you when the Becoming Brigitte Season 2 premieres in a little over a week. We'll see you then.